A Republican donor from Fort Worth complained that WinRed siphoned $11,000 from his account without any personal authorization from him. He wrote, "I'm 81 years old and I've been taken advantage of." He's still waiting for a response from Attorney General Paxton. Why isn't he here today testifying about what's actually taking place to our people? CNN reported that one 82-year-old woman wearing pajamas with holes in them when they interviewed her because she didn't want to spend money on new pajamas was swindled of more than $350,000 of her life savings that she had no idea she was giving to Republicans through WinRed. This is what real fraud looks like. Why don't we investigate it? Attorney General Paxton, who himself uses WinRed, systematically ignored all of these desperate constituent complaints. But somehow, the day after James Talarico, Mr. Paxton's opponent in his Senate race, raised a remarkable $2.5 million in a 24-hour period from ActBlue, Mr. Paxton suddenly decided to investigate ActBlue and dispatch undercover investigators to trawl ActBlue's business practices. Meantime, Paxton has consistently ignored oversight letters ranking members Morelli, Garcia, and I have sent to him. But whistleblowers come forward every day about WinRed's fraud. Just this week, my office got a whistleblower tip from a woman in Colorado, a registered Republican who said she gave $100 through WinRed, which WinRed turned into recurring weekly $100 contributions without her permission. She's been fighting over these fraudulent charges since February, contacting WinRed and the Republican National Committee, but has gotten absolutely nowhere. So she reached out to my office for help. And if that's the way that Republicans treat Republicans, it makes sense to me that Donald Trump has the lowest opinion ratings of any president in decades. But it's not just Paxton covering up WinRed's fraud. Last summer, we asked the Treasury Department to turn over all suspicious activity reports its financial monitors have gotten related to WinRed. And we asked FTC Chair Andrew Ferguson to turn over all complaints related to WinRed. CNN has revealed that WinRed had been used to defraud hundreds of elderly Americans and mislead specifically people battling dementia and other cognitive impairments, including Alzheimer's disease, into giving away millions of dollars, far more than they ever intended, far more than their families could afford. But the Treasury Department and the FTC have refused to turn over any documents or even answer our letters. They've refused to explain why they won't turn over the documents. But one detail in CNN's report provides a hint. The single biggest beneficiary of all these small dollar donations from these unwitting recurring donors was none other than Donald Trump, the founder of Trump University. There are some obvious things that we can and should do to stop online fundraising abuse across the board politically. In 2021, the FEC recommended that Congress ban pre-checked recurring donation boxes, so we would know that any recurring donations are unauthorized and illegal. That would have prevented many, if not most, of the deplorable fraudulent practices that have swindled millions and millions of dollars of people's life savings in Texas and all across the country. That was common sense when it was unanimously recommended by the FEC, and it's common sense today. Can we agree to that? How about today? I'd support that today. But I fear this hearing is not about making any positive policy changes. It's about hauling in the CEO of ActBlue, forcing her to take the Fifth Amendment. You know, Donald Trump's taken the Fifth Amendment 440 times. So before anybody starts denouncing the Constitution of the United States, think about what you say about people who invoke the Fifth Amendment against petty political vendettas and prosecutions. So this is exactly the kind of thing that the Fifth Amendment was designed to be there for. The Supreme Court has said the Fifth Amendment protects the innocent as well as the guilty, people who might be ensnared by ambiguous circumstances, and we can see today also ensnared by political vendettas and partisan investigations instead of seriously looking at a problem and trying to address it. That's what we should be doing. There are obviously problems across the board. Most of them relate to WinRed, but I'm sure some of them could relate to ActBlue too. Why aren't we seriously addressing that? Why does everything have to be the occasion for partisan exploitation and persecution instead of actually doing the business of the public. So we're waiting for a lot of answers from WinRed. I hope that we will get them, and I hope that we can have real change with a real investigation and a real hearing. I yield back, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Loudermilk, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
During a fiery 5-minute testimony, Ranking Member Jamie Raskin turned the tables on a Republican-led panel, exposing what appears to be a massive double standard in how Congress investigates political fraud. The hearing was ostensibly called to investigate ActBlue, the Democratic fundraising powerhouse. But as Representative Raskin pointed out with devastating specificity, the committee seems to have developed a severe case of tunnel vision. While Republicans are hyper-focused on ActBlue, they are systematically ignoring a mountain of bipartisan heartbreak happening right under their noses via their own fundraising platform, WinRed. Raskin laid out a series of deeply disturbing allegations that should transcend party lines. An 81-year-old Republican donor in Texas who had $11,000 siphoned from his account without authorization. An 82-year-old woman suffering from cognitive decline who was swindled out of $350,000 of her life savings. A registered Republican in Colorado whose one-time $100 donation was automatically converted into a weekly recurring charge. The presenter's take: this isn't just politics as usual. This is the systemic financial exploitation of vulnerable senior citizens. It shouldn't matter if the victim is a Democrat or a Republican. Fraud is fraud. Yet, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton has allegedly ignored these desperate cries for help from his own constituents. Why? Because, as Raskin noted, the single biggest beneficiary of these unapproved recurring donations happens to be Donald Trump. The timeline of AG Ken Paxton's sudden interest in fundraising fraud is particularly telling. For months, Paxton ignored oversight letters regarding WinRed. But the moment his Democratic Senate opponent, James Talarico, raised a staggering $2.5 million in 24 hours through ActBlue, Paxton suddenly found the energy to dispatch undercover investigators to troll the Democratic platform. It is hard to view this as anything other than a weaponized, partisan vendetta. Furthermore, federal agencies like the Treasury Department and the FTC are refusing to hand over documents or suspicious activity reports related to WinRed. The hypocrisy is staggering. What makes this entire spectacle so frustrating to watch is that a solution already exists. Back in 2021, the Federal Election Commission unanimously recommended a simple, common-sense fix: ban pre-check recurring donation boxes. If Congress actually cared about protecting grandmothers from having their bank accounts drained, they would pass that ban today. Raskin explicitly stated he would sign on to it immediately. But the committee didn't want to talk about solutions. They wanted a scalp. The Republican strategy for this hearing was transparent. Hall and the CEO of ActBlue forced her to plead the Fifth and use it as a partisan talking point. But as Raskin brilliantly reminded the room, Donald Trump himself has invoked the Fifth Amendment over 440 times. The Constitution protects the innocent from ambiguous circumstances and political witch hunts alike. This hearing wasn't about public service, it was about partisan exploitation. Until Congress stops using oversight committees as campaign weapons, everyday Americans will continue to be the collateral damage in Washington's fundraising wars. It's time to stop the political theater, ban the pre-check boxes, and actually protect the voters.